Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti. We are in January. This is the month in the life of Kashmir people, Kashmiri Pandits people. It has been a traumatic time. Just imagine for a moment, in the winter of Kashmir, you always hear the chants and threatening voices. Leave the land, convert to Islam, or die. If you are sitting in your home, and if these are the chants and threats coming to you from all sides of your home, what will be your mindset? Fear? Trepidation? And remember one thing more, this was not the first time happening. In the life of Kashmiri Pandit, this has been 1990, January 19th, marks the 30-year of genocide that is being commemorated at this point in time. Today's program is devoted to that moment. I have the great pleasure in welcoming two of, I would say, genocide survivors. One of them is Dr. Nirmala Mitra. She is here, she has been a pediatric neurologist and a very active member of the Kashmir diaspora in New York. And along with her, I have great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Rakesh Kaul. He has been on our program several times in the past. In addition to his remarkable CEO and executive positions in the United States, his current fame is the new book that he has written. It's called Dawn, the Warrior Princess of Kashmir. This book has been invited, and Mr. Kaul has been invited to world's largest literary festival in Jaipur in a few weeks from now. And Mr. Kaul would be going for that. So congratulations for that invite.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And I hope you are able to create the flutter and about the story and your book, and engineer turned author. Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Coming back to the topic here, I mean, it is a very important time. It's particularly important for me too, because somewhere along the line, the entire story of the genocide of Kashmiri Pandits in India has been lost. I was in Delhi at that time. I'm a politically aware person, but despite my being in Delhi at that time, there was hardly anything we ever heard of. We just thought it was a disturbance and people are running away. It took a little bit of a study to analyze how and why this happened. This is the story of the two survivors on the first-hand basis. And Dr. Mitra has some very interesting letters, and I'm very happy to show it to you here, that these letters are authentic letters. These are not cooked up letters. It has a seal of the Government of India and Prime Minister's office, addressed here with the stamp, as you can see. And the letter is from Indira Gandhi herself, written to Dr. Mitra for a couple of the inquiries that she had made with her. I hope you get a chance to see them. Some of them are on WhatsApp and Twitter already, but it's important to discuss this matter with the person on a first-hand basis. So I will begin with you, Nirmala ji. Is that you are a victim and a suppressed, and you have run away from Kashmir to just save yourself, I would guess.
Correct.
So share your thoughts about that entire thing, when the whole thing triggered off, and how did you make the decision to leave?
Because there was always discrimination. We were out of 120 medical students, 4 or 5 will be Kashmiri Pandit girls, and that means you have to be on the top of the list, and rest will be lost, either leave the place or not. And there were so many subtle discriminations, and we were aware of it. So I had already left Kashmir after my residence, after my medical school, which I did in Srinagar Medical College, and I came to Delhi. I did my post-graduation in pediatrics, and then I got married to my husband Raghu Mitra, who's a Bengali, and I had regular correspondence with my family, and these incidents were every day happening in Kashmir. And one day I got a letter from my niece writing me that she was not given admission to medical school and she had good grades, and at the same time my dad had written to me that he wanted to get some land for all the kids, but then he had written me back that because I am married to a Bengali, he cannot get any place for me in Kashmir, in Jammu. I was very angry at that time. These incidents happened one after another. My niece had written, my dad wrote to me. I didn't know what to do. We didn't have access to anything. So I just thought of writing. I don't know how this came to me. I thought of writing to Mrs. Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister then. So I wrote her a letter. I don't have a copy of that, but I must have written whatever were my complaints. And a few weeks later, I got a reply from her, which was a surprise to me. And she wrote there that she is equally affected by the fact that she is also Kashmiri originally, but is married to a non-Kashmiri and cannot have a place in Kashmir. And because of the fact that the media, Western media, and the government are pushing her too much.
Will you allow me to read this letter to the audience?
Sure. Go ahead.
Friends, this letter is signed by Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who was then the Prime Minister of India, dated January 8th from New Delhi. She writes here, "Dear Dr. Mitra, I have your letter of the 18th December. I share your concern. I too am unhappy that neither you who were born in Kashmir nor I whose forefathers came from there can own a small piece of land or home. But at the moment, the matter is not in my hands, and the Indian press, along with its foreign counterpart, are so busy depicting me as authoritarian that makes it all the more difficult to do necessary things. I shall inquire into the niece's case that she was talking about." Rakeshji, this throws about a real powerful thing here. And this juxtaposes with what Mr. Modi has done, the abrogation of Article 370, and that's totally transformed the entire storytelling here. So even a Kashmiri woman like Indira ji and yourself, just because you were married to a non-Kashmiri, you can't hold land there. How do you relate this entire law? How did this law got made that was causing discrimination between the people who were living there who chose to marry somebody else?
Yeah, so first I want to just make a couple of points. In my assessment, the revelation of this letter could prove to be late Indira Gandhi's greatest legacy in the shaping of the idea of India as one indivisible unit where all of its citizens are governed by one constitution. Because in this letter, you can see that there is a continuity, that this is not something that the current Prime Minister suddenly decided to do out of ideological reasons, but because there was a powerful Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, who had expressed in writing her opposition to what she saw was a highly discriminatory system. And so now, we're talking of two different articles. Article 370, everybody knows the history, was created because of a negotiation between Sheikh Abdullah, Prime Minister Nehru, and it sort of bypassed the parliamentary system. That's well known. Article 35A was created in, Maharaja Hari Singh's time. Again, the state subject rule. But ultimately, the whole thing it did was to essentially have its greatest impact on the Kashmiri Pandits. Because the Kashmiri Pandits, their land ownership was squeezed out by Sheikh Abdullah through the Land Tillers Act, so they lost their lands. Their educational opportunities were squeezed out because essentially the majority community declared itself as a minority community, so the youth were forced out, and inevitably when the youth were forced out of their state and their land, they met other people and they got married, and then of course inevitably they lost their state subject rights. So this was a calculated, well thought out strategy to essentially eliminate the Kashmiri Pandit community, and of course its grand final night was January 19, 1990, the horrible night of genocide of Kashmiri Pandits.
And that is something which I would want you to share, with the people that are watching this, because Tragically enough, the Kashmir genocide story is not known, not well known. Actually, the whole information was suppressed by the media and the government at that time. It is absolutely fantastic as of today that because of the Prime Minister Modi's initiatives, and we got to give him his due on this in this regard, but for him, we won't be talking about this again. This entire 30 years of story will be lost. So today I'm talking about, I'm totally shocked because 1989 when I was in Kashmir, I heard the first bullets fired, 1989. So, I was in Kashmir, Srinagar at that time. So 1990 this happened and I'm totally unaware of that. So I'm saying that what power and forces that were into play, that such a hateful event didn't gather the publicity or getting to know to the world around us.
As far as I know, it is when Jagmohan, he was appointed as governor of Kashmir. He informed government of India then, which was included Rajiv Gandhi, and he told them very clearly what was happening in Kashmir. I have listened to his talk. He said that the money which government of India was sending, they were utilizing that money for terrorism, for the trucks they were buying, whatever they were doing. He told Rajiv Gandhi, he had the whole this thing. And what Farooq did not let Jagmohan ji to reach to Rajiv Gandhi. He picked up his stuff and threw it in the river or just threw it in the garbage. And Rajiv Gandhi was having his party with Farooq. And same night, people were killed. And my sister was in India, in Kashmir. My sister, my brother-in-law, both were doctors. They were there. My sister was calling. She was telling, we are hearing this sounds, we are hearing that sound. They have threatened us. They have told us to leave, but we are not ready to leave. But next day we heard that they all had to leave. It was government of India or the Congress party who suppressed it. And there should be some accountability for them. I'm telling them that we should sue Rajiv Gandhi and his estate, and because genocide, this last one started from him. And even if he's not alive or other people are not alive, but there should be some accountability for those people who did this terrible killing, which was which is mind-boggling, the way they have killed those 4,000 people. And the rest left. And if they had stayed, they would have killed them. It would have been just a statistics.
I totally can understand that. If you are constantly hearing,
right,
leave the land,
right,
or convert to Islam or die, I mean that is from a very militant group of people who were determined to do that. And there is a series of stories and names there. People have been killed, butchered. And very inhuman way, so to say. One has to run away. And my anger is about that fact that you are a prolific, you have bold enough to reach out to Mrs. Gandhi at that time. I think somebody should put this letter in front of the Congress party and Rahul Gandhi. What do you have to say about this? And to that end, I totally agree with you that this is a totally new narrative. This is a legacy of Indira Gandhi where she is displaying her helplessness. Important part here is, and that's what my anger is, that even she didn't do anything. And the foreign media and local media did not let her do that? Or was it an excuse that she was hiding behind the press? Or was it real helplessness? What do you think?
In addition to Dr. Mitra's very correct and bold statement about accountability, I would add the media. And I find it very poignant. Yesterday, people call me because they want content since this 30th commemoration is coming. I want to share a small story about what life was like for the few people who were left alive. We all know what happened to the dead. We all know what happened to the people who fled. But what was the life of the people who were left, that tiny minuscule? And what is very poignant to me is when I sent yesterday this advertisement in a local newspaper where a Kashmiri Pandit put out a full-page ad begging the terrorists that he needed to get their permission to perform the last rites of his relative. So even to do that, they had to put out a full-page ad in a local newspaper, which was available to the entire Indian media, the entire foreign media, and yet they chose to turn a blind eye and remain silent.
Yet they were silent about it.
They were silent about it. And to this day, to today, there is a so-called activist who represents these militant people, and she passed a Twitter comment saying about a movie that's coming out about the Kashmiri Pandit genocide. She said, "Oh, don't go see the movie, boycott it, let bygones be bygones." Let bygones be bygones. I have to say, that is a novel criminal defense. No wonder the lawless in India adore her. And
Absolutely.
that's the kind of stuff that's going on even today, that these votaries of violence, these defenders of violence, have a space in Indian society, get invited by Indian media, no different than when Yasin Malik was invited to an India Today conclave. No greater shame on the media than what happened when Yasin Malik was challenged by a brave young Kashmiri Pandit journalist, Aditya Raj Kaul. And you know what? Aditya Raj Kaul was led out by security.
Right.
When the good are being handcuffed and said leave, and a murderer is being lionized by the media. But the tragedy is it's happening today.
And that's what is important here to remember. This is absolutely important for every Indian to realize, more so the Hindus. And I'll be very bold and frank about it. The Hindus have to realize that we are being taken for granted. We are marginalized in a majority country where 80% plus are Hindus. We are marginalized by the terror of minoritism in the country. That everything has become a vote bank politics. We are trying to be polite. I know about India Today conclaves where Imran Khan and Musharraf, they all came and blabbered and said whatever they wanted to say. I wondered, why are we giving these people a platform to insult us in our own home? What were we trying to gain, knowing full the history the way it was? Stay tuned. We will be back right after a short break. Welcome back. We are on a very sensitive topic about survival of Hinduism, as I would like to say here, because entire India is bending backwards to accommodate the minority sentiment, and minorities are virtually threatening the majority. One of the questions that bothers me, legally apart, legal issues apart, whatever it is, how is it that Muslims, the world talks about India's only Muslim majority state seeking its own status, in which Hindus are Pandits and Hindus are minorities. The Muslims are also claiming a minority status by being a majority. That baffles the hell out of me, actually. Is that how is it that you are being majority, you are given special status, you are given special privileges, separate flag and everything else, yet you are a minority? Explain to me, if you can, Rakeshji, how does that work, and where does the Congress party, who were running the country at that time, how and why did they succumb to that part of it? What was the bargain? What was the Faustian bargain in which they just gave in to everything that Sheikh Abdullah was asking and the generations are asking, as if they are the victims? This is something which baffles me, that how the media is tolerating, and I'm totally baffled by the fact that there are many Indian journalists who are talking about as if, what are you talking about? There is a very interesting narrative about how Nehru established the entire refugee mindset that Hindus are not accepted from anywhere, and that Nehruvian sad reflection on the treatment of Hindus from West Pakistan and East Pakistan of that time led to ignoring the plight of Hindus in Kashmir?
So I think the fatal error always starts with judgment of character. And for whatever reason, Prime Minister Nehru made a fatal judgment of character between Maharaja Hari Singh and Sheikh Abdullah. He made the decision to side with Sheikh Abdullah and exile Maharaja Hari Singh. And now history has shown that he was wrong. But I want to be a little bit specific. When we talk about Kashmiri Muslims, I think that's too broad a tar brush. I think it's these 120 families who I call the oligarchs. They were the criminal entrepreneurs. They were the ones who benefited from the $45 billion of Indian taxpayer money.
Right.
And this peculiar class of Kashmiri Muslims, the Faustian bargain that they had with Nehru was, okay, we'll sing your tune in the United Nations up to a point, then Sheikh Abdullah even undercut that. But in return for that, you let us adopt a sheikhdom inside the valley. And the sheikhdom had all the principles that eventually would have led it to become a Sharia state, because that's what sheikdoms are. In this, it wasn't just the Kashmiri Pandits who were certainly the worst sufferers, but there were Kashmiri Muslims who suffered too. And the Kashmiri Muslims who suffered were the nationalists, the ones who were on the side of India. And there were many. I mean, starting with Maqbool Sherwani. I mean, nobody in India today knows who Maqbool Sherwani is. But we would not have had Kashmir had it not been for Maqbool Sherwani, who misdirected the raiders when they came into the valley and gave the Indian army enough time to come in and make a stand. We lionized Yasin Malik. We lionized every person who opposed India through a policy of appeasement.
Right.
And you know what? Prime Minister Modi has called their bluff and said, we don't need you, and go cool your heels. And he has started grassroots democracy. He has started outreach to people. And you see now there's peace in Kashmir. So it was a very short-sighted policy that cost India dearly. And now we are beginning to correct it. And it will take time, but we are on the right track.
You know, the fact of the matter remains, Dr. Mitra, that it's not 1 or 2 million Muslims in India. It's a huge number. Right. So the question is that this challenge has to be dealt with. I think Prime Minister Modi has taken the right steps in this direction.
Absolutely.
I mean, for the first ever time, I think the whole world, including Indians, know about what happened. Otherwise, who had known about the threats or the gunning down or the rape and murder that had happened? Because even Indian journalists were responsible for suppressing that entire thing. The question then comes about is, how did this story of genocide get suppressed? How can so many people knew that there were refugees in Delhi and other areas? How come that entire genocide concept was never accepted by the Congress government?
It's amazing. I don't know how it happened. And when I got phone calls from India, they were telling this is what's happening. I said, what? Nothing news. There was not a trace of any news of all these things. I think they were basically protecting their voters. That has been policy of Congress. They protect Muslims, especially these militant Muslims, and that's what they are doing now again. They are restarting. Now Modi ji's government has done a great job, and it came to us, everybody was surprised and shocked. And it will take time, as Rakesh ji said, it will take some time to rectify 30 years mistakes.
Right.
But at the same time, this Congress, they are going all over, they are spreading wrong rumors. And at that time, then government, they were more interested in their own jobs rather than taking care of Kashmiri Pandits. This is an amazing thing, that they totally forgot about it and nobody talked about it. So only after 30 years now we are talking about it. And that brings me to the letter.
Yeah.
What happened to these letters for last 30 years?
Yes.
They were lying in my drawer somewhere. I had no idea, but I was always happy I have a letter from Indira Gandhi.
Sure.
Then I saw Rakesh ji has been writing a lot of books about Kashmir. So I thought one day I should give it to him because my grandchildren won't have any idea what to do with them.
That's right.
And the same day, this Article 370 happened, and I got these letters out, and he saw it. He said they mean something.
They do. I mean,
Right.
this is a historical document.
Right.
These are historical documents of a conversation
Right.
where a prime minister is saying something that how difficult it is for people of Kashmiri origin to find educational opportunities in their own home state,
Yeah.
which was the land of Saraswati for everybody there. So that brings back to other question here. Do you think that there was a major uproar for how do we resettle? How do we resettle the people who will go back? How do we resettle the Kashmiri Pandits back into the valley? Is it going to happen? Will it happen? Or people will be still circumspect about the fears that will dominate the minds of people?
So, look, the first thing I want to say about the stunning discovery of the letters, Dr. Mitra's crowning contribution of a lifetime of selfless service to the Kashmiri Pandit community, is that it really does reflect a core belief of the peaceful Kashmiri Pandits that we have a proverb, which I actually have in my first book on Kotarani: the palest ink will defeat the bloodiest sword. And that is the case here, that the narrative of the bloody sword has been destroyed by this letter. What Prime Minister Modi now needs to do with respect to Kashmiri Pandits is create a framework of restorative justice. And we have provided the Prime Minister and the Home Minister such a framework under which Kashmiri Pandits can engage with the Government of India, get restorative justice, and return back to Kashmir without fear of refoulement. And I think when we do that, it will send a signal to the nationalist Kashmiri Muslims also that the government is behind them. And we will create the Kashmir that was once what Europeans described, not me, not anybody, as the cradle of human civilization. Kashmir has so much unfulfilled potential that Pakistan-inspired Islamists have destroyed over the last 70 years. I know people, I personally will go invest and start ventures in Kashmir. And I know many people who will. But we have to have space there. We have to have political space, security space, and we have provided a framework. And we will work with the Government of India when they permit us to present them.
That brings back to another question, which we'll be talking about in the next segment of this program, is that, framework is good, but what about the militant mindset of the generation that has passed in the last 30 years? They have been indoctrinated and brainwashed in believing the evil that they preach, that this is their land and you are not wanted. How does one correct that part of the thing, the narrative to change in Kashmir area? Because the new militant that is there, they are no longer reflecting 1947. The hatred has been there for a very long time. How does this new group of people, how do they transform? And unless and until the framework is one, and it has to have a very important element of security content in that, because you cannot go back there to be murdered again. That's the point which is very, very important. Stay tuned, we will be back right after this short break. Welcome back. We have had some very insightful conversation about what is happening in Kashmir, what happened 30 years ago. And I also want to mention here that on 19th, there is a global commemoration of the Kashmir Pandit genocide all over the world, including in New Jersey, New York, California, you name the place, Chicago, everywhere something or the other is happening to commemorate that event. I will urge you, all of you, to go and visit whichever is closer to you, to learn the truth about the Kashmir genocide and what happened there, and show solidarity with the cause. Just as we were unawares of it 30 years ago, doesn't mean we have to be unawares and stupid even today. Now you know what happened there. Do something about it. Continuing the conversation, it brings back to another very important part. You have seen this letter. It's all on Twitter, and I'm proud to have this original copy of this letter here, which says even Mrs. Indira Gandhi, a prime minister of her stature, couldn't do anything about it because she was afraid of the press, because they made her feel as if she was some kind of a tyrant. The same press is doing the same thing to Mr. Modi. History repeats itself. And this is the time for all of us to stand up and contest and challenge that, whether it is an individual or a group. So Rakesh ji, I will begin with you in this part, that going forward now we know the story. We have the technology tool, social media tool, to make the world know what it is. It's not a human rights issue anymore. In my opinion, in the US, the congressmen and others are talking about a human rights issue. It's not. It's a survival issue. It's a life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's a life issue. There is no liberty or pursuit of happiness if life is not there. So it is a life issue, it's a survival issue. And I want you to share with us, going forward, we will begin, this fight begins now. This fight has begun now, actually. And we have to give an institutional framework to this, because it's not an isolated battle that you or Indira ji or I can win. We have a platform, we have to create the institutional framework. How do we do next? One of the things which I feel, tell me if I'm wrong about, is to create an awareness about Hindu unity itself. One of the factors that derails the Hindu mindset is that हम एकला चलो रे बंगाली में कहते हैं, everybody is by himself. उसको हो रहा है, हमें नहीं हुआ तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है? How will that attitudinal shift happen?
So I would say there are 2 or 3 mission critical steps. The first step is clearly inside the valley. You have an institutionalized framework of groomers. And many of these groomers have their loyalty to Wahhabi Islam, and they have essentially taken control of what was a very peaceful, peer-based local belief system. And so these groomers poison the minds of the youngsters. So there's a groomer system, they're hijacked the religious theology and pumped them with hate. That has to stop. Number 2, they are supported by a massive global disinformation system. The global disinformation system is got its roots in Kashmir, it's got its branches in the radical universities in India, it's got its supporters in the left-wing media, the communists, and then they come all the way to UK and they come all the way to the US, and this disinformation campaign succeeds with some members of the Congress in the US, because Indians, not just Hindus, but even Muslims like Tariq Fateh and Tahir Gora, Canadians and other Muslims, who can see what's going on because they are from the faith. We are not organized. We don't have those massive dollars. But I think a change is now occurring. I think people are realizing this disinformation campaign is feeding these groomers and essentially providing a cover-up of violence. I don't think this is a Hindu-Muslim binary. I think it's a binary between those who propagate violence to gain political control versus us who believe in the pathway of peace, the pathway of knowledge, the pathway of development. So I think we are, as Hindus, slightly passive. We live in peace, we live with our families, we live with our community. We don't have these kinds of ideological needs to establish hegemony And we are facing an ideology that wants to establish hegemony. So I think now the counter reaction is beginning. I'm actually quite optimistic.
I'm sure, so am I, because one thing is, for anything to happen, the first thing that must happen is awareness. If I don't know something, then I can't do anything about it. So you are totally right, absolutely agree with you, that there is a greater awareness of things around, and the world cannot remain passive to the terror that happens. And one of the things which really intrigues me is that while Kashmiris and Hindus Kashmiri Pandits have been victims, Hindus are victims, Aam Janta is a victim of Islamic terrorism, they are the ones who claim victimhood. They are the ones who claim sympathy. And if you say anything about, you ask a question, you are branded as Islamophobic. Whereas in reality, we are the ones who have suffered. And nobody is there to tell our story. How do we go about telling our story? Dr. Apsip, I would like to hear from you about that.
Yeah, I think this media is a lot biased, but at least at this time, they have come out, they have talked about it. And as we talked about it before, Modi government has started this issue, and it should be done. We should not stop here, because then it will be a forgotten place. Again, Muslims can do anything. Again, there has to be some kind of accountability in Kashmir, and people have to be, first thing I will suggest that there should be, temples should be renovated. That should be started. Those architectural sites should be renovated. And we should have support from the government. And the public should be made aware of it. I will give you one example. I have a South Indian friend who came to this country at the same time as I came, and we did same training. We meet each other everywhere. Hello, how are you? This, that. She was the first one. She sent me a picture after Modi ji's 370 abrogation. She said that, Nirmala, this is Kashmiri Pandits, and there was a genocide before also. I never heard of that. I said, thank God, now you know something. Then I kind of educated her. And we should talk about it more. We should make people aware of this. Every community should be aware. Our Kashmiri people should be aware what happened. I didn't know in 91 that some of our Kashmiris were killed brutally. I came to know later on about it. So education has to be done. Did we know that 45 million Hindus were killed in Bangladesh from 1947 up till now? I don't think people know. We are okay, I heard this phrase and heard it. Was anything done? Was there any accountability? No. And we need support of government for that. And they have started a motion in Kashmir, and they should end it now. And I think they have a plan. Modi ji's government has a good plan, and they are very reasonable. They are doing it very nicely, and it should be done now.
That brings me to another subject matter, and that is, I kind of live by that part of the story, is that, even if we do this as an institutional framework, Hindus somewhere along the line do not contribute to the causes that we believe in and is essential for our survival. I know one thing for sure, that Muslims get money. For anything you need money to do, whether you want to do a social media campaign or whatever, Hindus themselves do not contribute to the causes that are important and relevant for us. That is something very important to configure. They have their own processes by which they collect money. We have none. And as a result of which, in the absence of money, things remain as a conversation piece alone. And how do we draw the wealth to invest into this cause, which is essential for our survival, is the key to the next stage. Because government alone cannot do everything. Government can provide the framework. But if the framework is not, like for example, your niece got the admission, but it was denied for many, many years, right? So even though the intervention of the authority that happens, the outcome takes time to happen. We know how the whole thing works.
Right.
So how do we create an awareness where people write a check? That's important, without which nothing will happen. Even our congressmen, in the absence of money, they will say, you are not giving me money, other guys are giving me money, I'm going to espouse their cause. How do we address that?
So the answer is remarkably simple, and I will build on what Dr. Mitra said. How does a community contribute? I mean, you can look at any community. Let's start in India. The typical collection vehicles is the community center. Now, a community center may have a gathering on Friday, and then, you know, they collect money there. They may have a gathering on Sunday, they collect money there.
Right.
Now, what is the law in India? The law in India is that the Hindu temples, who controls the treasury?
Government again.
So you see, this was such a pernicious framework that was created. If there's a level playing field and control of the temples and shrines is given back to the Hindus, then that community at a local level will have the financial muscle to protect itself. You don't have to do anything more. Just give back the community its rights. But if you're going to have a system where other groups can gather and collect money and use it in good ways or bad, and Hindus gather and their money is stripped away and actually used to support a welfare system for others, this is such a boondoggle that if you were to describe it to anybody sane outside India, they would say, are you crazy? So the simple answer is hand over the temple and shrines back to the community.
And that's very important, because that's very dear to me. That topic is very dear to me. You can't have, in the name of secularism, a discrimination of Hindus themselves. Why is it that our temples are in control of the government? And the temples are one of the richest places, wealthiest places for Hindus contribute to those places. So the question is, government uses that money to provide others, not to Hindus. So there is a right for education, that madrasas can teach whatever they want, but Hindus can't teach Hindu literature in their own places. And that discrimination must end. Friends, this is very important conversation we had here. As always, every conversation has to come to an end. Important thing is that this is just the beginning. We will talk more about this matter and going forward as what we must do next. You had mentioned about the temples being reconstructed in Kashmir. So think about it like this, and that angers me. And I have talked with my Muslim friends as well. They took advantage of a democratic process to deny Ram Mandir, which took so many years. And it was Mr. Modi, somewhere along the line, he played the thing very well to get the judgment, whatever the judgment came, that it came in favor of Ram, is thank you, Ramji. I would put it that way. So the point of the matter remains is that, yeah, government can issue an order, but who will build the temple? There are hardly any Hindus left in Kashmir. Even the rest of the India, we are not able to take back the temples, which have clear architectural proof that this was a temple superimposed by a mosque over there. So friends, it has been a great conversation. January 19th, make sure that you go to one of these events where you will learn a lot more about the actual story, learn more, show solidarity, and participate in the renaissance that is awaiting India to happen. Thank you, Nirmala-ji. Really wonderful to see you, and the letters in the original. These are historic documents.
Thank you so
and
much.
Rakesh-ji, as usual, have a great time in Jaipur with your book and everything that you are going to do there. Have a great weekend.